Good morning. I'm King County Councilmember Joe McDermott, and I chair the Council's Budget and Fiscal Management Committee. I'm joined today by my fellow council members, Kathy Lambert, the Vice Chair of the committee, Jane Haig, and Dave Upthegrove. We're also joined by Sheriff John Urquhart, Mary Ellen Stone, the Executive Director of the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, Merrill Cousin, the Executive Director of the King County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and Barbara Langdon, the Executive Director of LifeWire. Today, we introduce our proposed 2015-2016 budget. It is a budget that makes cuts to better align our revenues with our expenses, but it also makes strategic investments to help our King County families and communities be more secure. And it invests in some aspects of local government for our unincorporated areas. Our work over the last couple of months has resulted in a $9 billion two-year biennial budget. It is our first two-year biennial budget. It includes a general fund of $1.5 billion, 3/4 of which goes to law, justice, and public safety services. I am now announcing that our budget keeps all 10 public health clinics open into the biennium. Partners have come forward and offered one-time cash contributions. Public health employees have foregone raises, and we've reduced other spending to help keep the doors open at the Federal Way, Auburn, and Greenbridge clinics. Under our proposal, Bothel's North Shore Clinic will be kept open for 1 year. This will give us more time to work with our partners to find creative ways to maintain delivery of maternal support services and the Women, Infant, and Children Feeding Program available to clients. It is very clear that the existing public health model is no longer sustainable. In fact, it has not been sustainable since the motor vehicle excise tax was eliminated in 2000. Our budget proposal provides a bridge, allowing us to work with partner organizations, the state legislature, and the federal and local governments to develop a long-term, sustainable solution that will ensure our most vulnerable neighbors have access to critical public health services. I am proud of the budget we are putting forward today. I'm proud that despite shrinking revenues, the county continues to help our most vulnerable neighbors. And we are all particularly proud of some new priorities included in the budget, including one here in the Sheriff's Office that Councilmember Lambert, the chair of the Council's Law, Justice, Health, and Human Services Committee will describe. Councilmember Lambert?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to say thank you to the budget leadership team. It was a collaborative effort, and it was a privilege to work with each member. And I'd also like to thank our staff for their expertise, for their long hours, and for helping us through this long process. So I'd like to address my top priorities during this budget cycle. There were many, but I'll only go through a few with you today. First is the roads, or rural roads in this county. We have 1,500 miles of roads in the county, and that is a source that I feel is still a crisis that we are going to need to deal with. But our budget was able to put an additional $6 million into that budget. So I'm very thankful about that. It's a big step in the right direction, but we do need about $250 million more a year in order to fully fund that account. So there's more work that we will continue to do on that with our partners to look for more tools in that area. Another one of our priorities is addressing the county's responsibility as a local government. And that is for the unincorporated areas, which is about 250,000 people, where we are their only government. So some of the things that we'll be doing to help our local government is that we'll be funding more support for noxious weeds control, which will make us a much better neighbor in the unincorporated areas. It'll provide more customer service abilities at our land use deeper office. It'll help with abatements for those citizens that are dealing with people in their neighborhoods that are not in compliance with our land use. And one of the highlights is that we will also be having some more deputies on patrol in the sheriff's office, which leads me to the exciting news that we will be restoring the sheriff's domestic violence unit, at least part of it. This unit will provide more protection and safety plans coordination for DV cases. And I'm very pleased to see that we have this progress, because not only will it make it safer for the people dealing with this issue, but it will also help the other deputies to get back on patrol. I'm pleased that we've made great progress in this budget on these issues, and that the work that we did, we were able to accomplish within the constrained revenues that we have right now. So thank you, and with that, I'd like to introduce another member, Jane Haig.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you all for being here today. This was a responsible budget. It's a budget that takes a look at making priorities, making tough choices, and living within our means, but still making some strategic choices that fund public health, public safety, address our most vulnerable population, and also deals responsibly with transit. And I'm excited that we've been able to do this not only responsibly, but in partnerships, not only with the executive, but with our suburban cities, with the city of Seattle, and with our nonprofits. That's an important outreach for this government to be a regional service provider. And I'm very excited that one of the hallmarks of this budget, besides restoring the domestic violence unit to the sheriff's office and dealing with our most vulnerable through public health and public safety, is to also deal with the transit issue. And we're announcing today that in cooperation with the executive, we will be putting together another regional transit task force that will be looking at refining our financial principles, that will be working with different kinds of transit service for different parts of the county, and making sure that we all have access to transportation and infrastructure to get us to jobs and services. So the task force will convene and make recommendations by June of 2015. And we'll be taking a look at how we can buy additional service, how we can refine our financial principles, and how the suburban and rural areas can have access to Metro. So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to my friend and colleague, Dave Upthegrove, to talk further about transit issues.
Thanks. Thanks, Jane. My name is Dave Upthegrove, King County Council member from South King County and the fourth member of our budget leadership team. Public transportation is one of the most important functions of county government. And we made a commitment going into the budget process that we would look carefully at our levels of bus service, level of reserves, and make a decision regarding the need for bus service reductions. And we were able to conclude, and we can announce today that we are funding in the budget full maintenance of existing bus service throughout the biennium. And we do so while maintaining prudent and adequate reserves for the future. In addition, we know that just this last September, we saw the biggest cut in bus service in Metro's history. And although those were lower productivity routes, there were some communities from Snoqualmie to Burien that were left with some significant service gaps. And that's why we're building on our existing program for alternative service delivery and providing $6 million a year. That's double what was provided in the executive's budget for alternative transit service. That means something other than a big bus on a fixed route. It means shuttle service. And so for those communities, whether it's Mercer Island, Snoqualmie, Burien, that were left with service gaps, this should help mitigate some of those impacts. In addition, our budget provides full funding for an additional auditor in the Legislative Branch Auditor's Office that will focus solely on the transit division. The legislative branch, the executive branch have come up with significant savings and reforms in recent years, but we always believe there's more that can be done, and we think this step will help strengthen and improve public trust and confidence in the division. In addition, one of the items, it's a small budget item, but we heard a lot about it. There was a proposal in the budget we received to get rid of the paper schedules for bus service, and we decided that there are a lot of folks who rely upon those, and we maintained funding for the paper bus schedules. One last item that I want to end on. I'm the newest member of the King County Council. I started this year, and it's my first time through this budget process, and I was very pleasantly surprised at how collaborative things were. I read the news about what's happening in Washington, D.C. I've been through it in Olympia, and this was really a refreshing example, I think, of elected officials actually working together to solve problems. We talked to every member of the county council. We did a good job, I believe, in addressing the needs of every part of the county to the extent possible within the constraints we had, and we did so in a collaborative way, and I feel good about the team that I worked with and about this budget process. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our King County Sheriff, John Urquhart.
Thank you. Good morning. If you ask any police chief or any sheriff what the most important, the number one priority of government is, he or she will always tell you the number one priority of government is public safety. And I don't disagree with that. In fact, 75% of the general fund goes to public safety, or at least to criminal justice. But I've always viewed public safety as being bigger than the police department. It's bigger than just the sheriff's office. Public safety includes the social service agencies. And I feel, the sheriff's office has to go hand in hand and work hand in hand with the social service agencies. When we go to the council, when we ask for budget dollars, there has to be an equitable sharing of those. And I think there is. And one of the examples of that is the council agreeing to restore the domestic violence unit in the sheriff's office. Councilmember Lambert came to me a couple of months ago. She said, Sheriff, if we, the council, could restore one unit that's been cut in the sheriff's office, one unit, what would that be? And my immediate answer was the domestic violence unit. Domestic violence is an insidious crime, even though in many cases, it's a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor. What it does to families, what it does to relationships, what it does to the community is outrageous. A domestic violence suspect is the most likely suspect of any crime to go on and commit another very, very serious felony, up to and including homicide. With a specialized unit that knows how to investigate these crimes, that has the training to investigate these crimes, has the experience to investigate these crimes, we can get more convictions. If we get a conviction on a domestic violence suspect, he or she is not allowed to possess a handgun for the rest of their life under federal law. That's very, very critical. That helps immensely. This is an important unit for the sheriff, for a police department that's our size. We need this unit. I could not be happier to have this unit restored, and I want to thank the council, particularly Councilmember Lambert, but the entire leadership budget team of the King County Council for restoring this unit. Thank you so very much. I think it's going to be an immense help to the citizens of unincorporated King County.
Thank you, Sheriff Urquhart. Our next speaker will be Merrill Cousin, the Executive Director of the King County Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Thank you. Again, my name is Merrill Cousin. I'm the Executive Director of the King County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I really want to commend Sheriff Urquhart and the Council for their leadership and vision in dedicating funding to restore the Domestic Violence Unit in the Sheriff's Office. Domestic violence is a major public health and public safety issue in our community, and law enforcement plays a critical role in our region's response to respond to the problem, our region's efforts to respond to the problem. And having specialized domestic violence units is widely recognized as a best practice for law enforcement agencies. It allows for officers to develop specialized expertise on this complex issue to help victims improve their safety and connect to needed community services, and to more effectively investigate domestic violence cases with the goal of successfully holding abusers accountable. Just as importantly, I think, though, this investment signals that the Sheriff's Office and the county as a whole see domestic violence as a priority. Coupled with robust investments in community-based services and prevention programs, this investment really has the potential to help us significantly move the needle towards our goal of decreasing and ultimately ending violence and abuse in our communities. So thank you all for your leadership.
Thank you. And next is Mary Ellen Stone, the Executive Director of the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center.
Hi, I just want to say a couple of things in response to the budget that's coming out. First of all, Project 360 is a program that is supported, and I so appreciate this, by the council. When we know that 40% of homeless youth are sexually assaulted before they become homeless, we knew at King County Sexual Assault Resource Center we need to do something about the trauma that they experience, because that continues to keep them in this chronic cycle of homelessness. Thanks to support from the county and in partnership with two other organizations, Friends of Youth and Youth Care, we have this very interesting program going, which is showing very good outcomes in reducing the trauma that these youth experience and allowing them to then move on to job training, GED, and other skills that they need to break themselves out of the cycle of homelessness. So very much appreciate the support from the council on this project. The other thing I want to say is as the director of the largest sexual assault program in King County, the support we have from King County government is exemplary in the state, it's exemplary in the country. We have a foundation that victims of sexual assault and domestic violence can rely on getting good state-of-the-art services to help them move from victims to survivors. So I thank you so very much for your support.
Thank you. And now Barbara Langdon, the Executive Director of LifeWire.
Each survivor of domestic violence has a very unique story. They're on a very distinct journey. LifeWire is always so thrilled to partner with them on their journey to safety and security. Domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness among women. We so support this wonderful commitment by the council to encourage and support public safety in the domestic violence field. We are so thrilled to partner with the Sheriff's Department to really hold accountable folks who are really causing such terrible, terrible issues at home for our clients. We are so pleased with the county that they have continued to make domestic violence a priority. They continue to put safety of women and children at the top of the public safety list. And we so appreciate that more than they can know. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have time for a couple questions.
Yeah, I have a question. We've heard the executives say a lot about how the taxation system is broken in terms of funding county government. We heard a lot of the successes today, but what are some of the difficult cuts that the council is making?
The vast majority of the FTE reductions that the executive spoke of continue in this budget. Very small number of positions are restored in the budget. So we continue cuts in the road services division. We continue cuts in public health that will affect people throughout the county. The executive is right. We have a ongoing problem with our revenue not meeting our expenses. Our revenue grows slower than our expenses, and that's built into the way the county is funded. And we need that solution to come from the state.
But the growth is really good right now. Is that what made the difference, say, from last spring and summer to today in terms of the transit funding? Because we were told there was going to be a series of significant transit cuts, and now all of a sudden it's status quo.
It is not status quo from last summer. Remember, the largest service reduction in Metro's history went into effect just about 6 weeks ago in late September. And the transit fund does rely heavily on sales tax, which had taken a particular beating during the Great Recession. $1.2 billion of revenue we had expected that we will never receive. There has been an uptick in sales tax beyond recent projections, and that has helped us in transit funding.
About the roads, Kathy mentioned $6 million, which is just a drop in the bucket of what is needed there. How are you going to spend that money?
We are leaving the funding decisions for those funds to the department, knowing that in many ways they are best in touch with the needs throughout the county and all of unincorporated King County about those needs. Some of it, I imagine, will be used for lane replacement, and some of it for operation of their facilities.
Could the sheriff describe a little bit more about the DV unit? How many officers? Is it investigatory or is it incident response in nature? How does that work?
It'll be investigatory primarily, 2 detectives and a community service officer. Community service officer is equally important because they are able to work very, very closely with victims, make sure they get to court on time, make sure they have the county services that they need, and then the 2 detectives will do this very specialized investigation. Oftentimes we want to go to trial with a a reluctant victim for whatever reason. Working closely with the prosecutor's office, we can have good, successful prosecutions, even with a reluctant victim, if we have the proper investigation, if we get the medical records, if we get the 911 tapes, if we take interviews from kids, for example. That helps immensely. But they're complex investigations, they're long investigations, and we need specialized detectives that know how to do those, that have the time to do those, that have the training to do that type of investigation, and really have the fire in their belly to do that because they know how important it is. So 2 detectives and a CSO.
Something's better than nothing, but is that enough to come close to addressing the problem?
Well, no, it's not enough to totally address the problem, but it's a huge step forward. Right now, those investigations, those complex investigations, are done by generalist detectives that have a lot on their plate, including car prowls, car thefts, burglaries, shoplifts, you name it. So this is a huge step forward, and it shows our commitment, shows my commitment, shows the Sheriff's Office commitment to fighting domestic violence.
What's the relative size of the DV unit compared to what you had before?
I think we had, if I'm remembering correctly, we had 5 detectives before. But those were also farmed out to some of our contract cities, our partner cities. At this point at least, until we can get this going, this is just for unincorporated King County. The 250,000 people that live in unincorporated King County. And remember, if that was a city, that city would be larger than Spokane, larger than Tacoma, larger than Bellevue. It would be the 2nd largest city in the state of Washington, 250,000 people. You need to keep that in mind. They deserve services. They deserve governmental services. And this council does the best they can, under the tax structure you mentioned, to provide those services.
You just said you couldn't be happier, but you weren't too happy when you testified to the Budget Committee a month or so back. What's better today than it was back then?
Because I'm getting the Sheriff's Office restored to where it was before, and I wouldn't characterize that as being unhappy at all. I was being realistic. Remember, we were cut by 150 police officer commission positions during the Great Recession. We're getting that back. Last year we got 8. Today we're getting 2, plus some civilian positions over the last couple of years since I've been sheriff. That's huge. That's very, very, very important. I'm not complaining. I wasn't complaining at the budget. I'm not complaining today. In fact, today I'm really, really happy. This is a great step forward, thanks to their leadership.
So your staffing is back to pre-recession levels?
Oh God, no. No.
What did you just say?
No. We lost 150 positions. We are starting to build back up. Now we're back up by 10 over that. So yeah, we lost a lot of positions. It's not going to happen overnight. I get that. And I'm not pushing for that to happen overnight. What I'm pushing for is a change in the law so that the county can get the advantages of the tax structure that the cities have on a regular basis. Again, 2nd largest city in Washington, if unincorporated King County was a city, but they can't tax the way, not that I'm for taxation necessarily, they can't tax the way the city does. No utility tax, no B&O tax, all kinds of things that needs to change in Olympia to get us back up where we need to be. But I digress.
Then to close, I would like to thank my 3 colleagues on the budget leadership team, Sheriff Urquhart, and the advocates who provide the social services that we're supporting, particularly for sexual assault and domestic violence victims throughout the county every day. And I'd also like to thank the executive and his offices for the strong budget they sent to us and their cooperation with us over the last 7-8 weeks as we have worked on the budget as well. Thank you very much.